Rob Gronkowski going to the Buccaneers. Tiger, Phil, Brady, and Manning all play golf together. Last Dance episodes 3 and 4 coming out on Sunday. We'll look back on 1 and 2 as well. But first, the NFL Draft.
I'm Tanner Camp with Zachariah Begley, and this is Beyond the Stats.
So Tanner, NFL Draft, virtual draft, I beat this year because of, COVID-19, obviously. But, how do you feel so far first about how the draft has been run in general?
There obviously were, first that I might say, a lot of, concerns, with internet. You're not sure of how it's going to work. And there were a lot of issues. They even had some technical issues a couple days before the actual draft. So that kind of raised an eyebrow. Of course, Joe Burrow talking about how he didn't think he was going to look his best because he hasn't gotten a haircut, which I'm sure a lot of people are going through. But I was able to watch the first and second round. And I've got to say, Zach, I was actually a lot more impressed with it than I was expecting. I thought it all went really smoothly. I liked the fans' reactions too. They had fans that would come in and show their reactions to getting certain players. Obviously, Bengals fans getting excited that Joe Burrow was going to Cincinnati. So as a whole, for something that could have really gone downhill or not been as successful as they were hoping, I really liked how it was set up, and I liked what they were doing, and it's gone really well so far.
Yeah, they did really well in the NFL Draft. I like Roger Goodell. Or I liked how they had the fans on the TV behind Roger Goodell, and their fans kept coming in, and they kept, they kept booing him, and I like that we didn't miss the boos this year. It's become it's a staple of the NFL Draft, really, the boos. I'm curious. I'm curious if they do something like this in the future anyway, because it almost was better than the regular draft. I liked that he was in his house and everyone was just kind of like at home with their families, and we got to see a little bit into the lives of players more than on draft day when they're not at home, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And, obviously very convenient because, with you got to see guys like, like Joe Burrow and Tua, who was back at home, and you got to see players in their home and their natural reaction, with their parents. It is definitely a different feel than, the actual NFL draft, being in front of all of the other top players in the country, going up and shaking the commissioner's hand and just getting to live that moment of, hey, I got drafted by an NFL team. It is a different feel, but again, it's a different feeling for the actual draft and being at home. So yeah, I'm like you. I'm curious as to once the draft is over, what they'll do about this. A lot of players usually sometimes they're home just due to distance or due to wanting to be with their family. So yeah, I'll be interested to see where this goes and what the NFL decides to do with this, depending on where how this turns out for all the players.
Yeah. So talking about the actual who got picked, who do you think was the most surprising pick for you? I have a couple names in mind, or a couple ideas in mind, but who do you think was the most surprising pick for you between of the first and second round?
So I think it was really interesting to see all these, players. I mean, I think a lot of people knew the first two picks, and because, we had kind of been messaging through the actual draft. And after the first two picks, it really was kind of up in the air for a lot of the players for where they go. It depends on by position. If any last second trades were supposed to happen during this. But with Tua going to the Dolphins, I'm not necessarily, I think it's more surprising in the sense of, I think it's also the biggest gamble. And the reason I say that is Tua, I will give props, is a absolutely phenomenal quarterback, great career at Alabama. In his recent workout videos, we've seen him move really well and has a great arm for being a lefty quarterback as well. But the gamble obviously is just the health factor. And I think that is the gamble. But at the same time, it's something that could be that what the Dolphins need to go in the right direction. So I think that's my most surprising, but even more so the biggest gamble. I'm curious to hear who you have, because again, we were messaging through a lot of the draft.
Right. So I think the most surprising pick for me was Jordan Love to the Packers at 26, mostly because if he had fallen to them, because they were originally slotted for 30, and if he had fallen to them at 30, I would have been like, okay, but they traded up to 26 to get him. And that was really, really interesting. And people have been comparing it to the Aaron Rodgers thing, but there is some differences. Like Aaron, like at the time, people thought Brett Favre was going to retire at the end of the 2005 season. He ended up playing 2 more years for the Packers, but like Brett Favre had talked about retiring in 2005 when they drafted Aaron Rodgers. Um, Aaron Rodgers has been talking about playing for as long as he possibly can. Like he has no plans of retiring in the next few years. So maybe he gets traded in a couple of years. I don't know. The other pick that was really surprising to me was Jalen Hurts to the Eagles in the
Yep.
second round.
Yep. That's what I was going to say.
Um, I thought they could have gotten him in probably the third or fourth round if they wanted a backup quarterback and then drafted because they really need wide receiver help. They could have gotten a second receiver. Like, I don't remember who's on the board still at that point, but they could have gotten a second receiver, at their pick, and they went and got a quarterback to be a backup quarterback. Like they got a backup quarterback in the second round when they probably could have waited to the third or fourth to get him and gotten a little bit more help. Um, yeah, one thing we interested to see. So, the Bengals have drafted an LSU Tiger and a Clemson Tiger. Do they go get a Memphis Tiger, a Missouri Tiger, and a Auburn Tiger?
I think the answer is
I mean,
very clear. Yes. I mean, there's
I mean,
no, but no. Going back to Jalen
yeah.
Hurts, I 100%. That's what I was going to say. I think, and the idea being, that Oklahoma has been an offensive powerhouse, and Jalen Hurts was a big part of that. So it kind of, I'm the same with you. It kind of turned heads that the Eagles ended up picking him, and like you said, kind of getting him later on in the third, fourth round. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes for the Eagles in terms of, will he go right away? Will it be someone else? So I just can't wait for all these players and the production value that they're going to say. But the Jalen Hurts one would be something that I think a lot of people will be keeping an eye on.
Well, I mean, they have Carson Wentz. They have their starting
Yes.
quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So they're clearly drafting him as a backup. So that's why I didn't understand that. One more thing before we wrap this up. Who do you think has done the best so far drafting? Yeah, through the first couple of rounds.
I was trying to read through some stuff, see, because obviously a lot of opinions are going to be different for who they think done the best job. That's a really good question. I mean, I would say the Bengals and getting Joe Burrow, especially since it was publicly stated that Andy Dalton is okay with playing a backup role, kind of an older quarterback. That he's ready for almost the next phase for the Bengals to get ready to try to build a new superstar around their franchise. So I would say the Bengals, but that's also because I think they made the right move in terms of not only a really, really good quarterback, but someone who's local. So I think attendance will be higher for Cincinnati. So I want to say the Bengals, but I'm looking at all perspectives in general.
Right, and they went and drafted a wide receiver at the top of the second round too, in T. Higgins to go along with AJ Green and Tyler Boyd. So that was a good move. I think the Chargers did pretty well also. So the Chargers they got a quarterback at 6 and Justin Herbert. They're yeah. I mean, so they have a quarterback who I think is going to probably have the most year one success because I mean, look at who's around him. Austin Eckler, Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. I mean, he's got targets. Like he is legit. Like their offensive line is okay, but they went and got Trey Turner, to help bolster the offensive line some. Like and he can move. On like Phillip Rivers at 37 couldn't really move. He wasn't really a mover before, but he really couldn't move anymore, and so that hurts. But Justin Herbert, pretty athletic, that will help. And then they went and got Kenneth Murray, the linebacker, they traded back it up to I think 2023 to go get the Kenneth Murray, and that was a good move also to kind of get a linebacker. So get a middle linebacker. So get an inside, a middle linebacker to quarterback the defense, get a quarterback to quarterback the offense. Kind of trying to build that way. I mean, they have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Joey Bosa, um, Melvin Ingram. They have Derwin James. They just um, they got players on both sides of the ball, and going and getting a quarterback at 6, which is the biggest need, and then getting another linebacker later on the first round was a good move. I think Miami did pretty well, like you said, Tua, and then they got a tackle at the end of the first round, and then I mean they did pretty good that way. They went and drafted another corner, which was more of a luxury pick because they have Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. But yeah, that's pretty good. We're going to wrap this segment up. We'll be back with talking about Rob Gronkowski when we return. This is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. I'm Tanner Camp alongside my partner, Zachariah Begley. Zach, news that I think shocked the football world. Rob Gronkowski is going to the Buccaneers. To be exact, the Bucs traded a 4th-round pick for this year's draft to the Patriots in exchange for Gronk and then a 7th-round pick in this draft. Zach, I know when I first heard this news, it just blew me out of the water, obviously relating back to Tom Brady with him going to the Buccaneers. As you being the football expert, I cannot wait to hear when you saw this message about Gronk going to the Bucs, what was the first thing you were thinking?
Well, I would first like to say, don't call experts a strong word.
You know a lot about football, though.
That's kind of fair. Football, that's kind of fair. But I thought you texted to me, and I thought it was a joke. I was like, wait, he's retired. Okay, this is a joke. Moving on. And then I was like, oh wait, no, this actually happened. No, you know what's interesting? Rob Gronkowski was doing an interview recently, and he said he was contemplating about retiring, and then Belichick was like, "I'm going to trade you to the Lions," and so he retired. Like that put the nail in the coffin for him. Like this is like he said this. So I mean, yeah. So like I like I think he wanted to retire. Like he's enjoying retirement, but I think that's interesting that that's what put him over the edge is being like, I don't want to play for the Lions. I'm sorry, Lions and Lions fans, but yeah, I'm not really that surprised. But yeah, what does that mean? So now that he's coming out of retirement again to play for the Bucks, I mean the Bucks have the best. If Rob Gronkowski is anywhere as good as he was before he retired, the Buccaneers have the best tight end depth chart in the league. I mean, Cameron Brate, OJ Howard, Rob Gronkowski, you can't go wrong with that. And then they have everyone. I mean, Ronald Jones is they could maybe get better running back, but look at it. They have Chris Godwin, they have Mike Williams, they have Rob Gronkowski, OJ Howard, Cameron Brate. They have a solid line. They got Levante David. They got they have Vita Vea. I mean, they have everyone on the offensive side of the ball. They might go out and sign Percy Harvin too if he comes out of retirement. He's trying. We'll see if a team picks him up. But man, Rob Gronkowski is just the rich getting richer for the Buccaneers. I mean, and they have an offensive-minded coach in Bruce Arians. They might put up if Tom Brady is anywhere semblance of good this year, they might put up like 35 points a game. I'm not even kidding with you. Like they have like ridiculous amount of people to throw to.
And Zach, I think the one thing that's interesting, because for people who might not, you think like, well, wait, Gronk retired. How does that work? I happen to have this. The reason why is that even though Gronk did retire, his rights still belong to the Patriots because there was still 1 year remaining on his 6-year contract. I think that's important to know because when I first heard this news, of course, the first thing I asked was, wait a minute, but he retired. How does that work? So seeing that is very important. Then, of course, what you said about another reason he retired, going to the Lions. Again, that's not disrespect to the Lions, but that kind of mentions about where they have been, and hopefully they'll make a great turnaround here in the next couple of years. But Zach, obviously the history behind Brady and Gronk is just amazing. I mean, Gronk is a fantastic tight end. He's got great hands, and he's just a really, really strong tight end in terms of his presence, but in terms of his actual strength. Tom Brady, I mean, the Buccaneers this offseason have made some big moves. With these moves they made, obviously Brady and Gronk being kind of big headlines, where do you think the Buccaneers are going to go in terms of maybe win total, or just where do you think the direction is that they're going to go having Brady and Gronk now on the same team?
I mean, 10 and I I I don't want to put them past the Saints necessarily. Um, I mean, the Saints added some good players, like they signed Emmanuel Sanders to go along with Michael Thomas, so now they have a second wide receiver. I mean, they had Ted Ginn who could run deep, but now they have two deep threats to go along with Michael Thomas. But I don't want to put them ahead of the Saints necessarily because this is Brady's first year and he's learning a new offense. But the amount of firepower they have, like if Brady is anywhere near as good as he was in New England, I think they can. I think they could win the division. I think they could. I think they have enough talent to win the division, but I don't want to bet against the Saints necessarily. I think they sneak it. I think they get in as a very good wild card team. Is what I think, like 10-6, 11-5. But I think the Saints will be better than them.
Right, because we know with that division, obviously the Saints probably the best team that will match up with them. Falcons and Panthers, with the Panthers obviously in Cam Newton, I'm curious as to where they're going to go. So
Yeah,
yeah, I that'll be with that division.
there's too many question marks for the Panthers. I mean, new head coach, new quarterback. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know.
But so, staying with the Buccaneers, if you're obviously a Buccaneers fan, you're excited for how the season is going to go, and just the fact that they have a shot to not only make the playoffs, but maybe go up against some good teams, as you said, more probably a wild card depending on where the Saints go. Obviously when it comes to the regular season, so many things can happen. It takes one play to change an entire season. But this move that the Buccaneers made by far is another great addition to the fantastic offseason that they've been having. So Tiger Woods, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Phil Mickelson all going up against each other in a golf tournament. That's what we're going to be talking about next on Beyond the Stats.
Back here on Beyond the Stats, it's Zachariah Begley along with my partner Tanner Camp. We're talking about golf, particularly a golf charity tournament that will be happening. It's Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. So Peyton Manning will be partnered with Tiger Woods, and Tom Brady will be partnered with Phil Mickelson for the event. And of course, it'll be a charity raising money for COVID-19 relief. Tanner, can you break it down a little bit more?
So yeah, you broke it down really well. Tiger Woods, Peyton Manning will be on the same team. Obviously, Tiger Woods still playing, and Peyton Manning retired, but more than happy to be a part of this. And then it'll be Phil Mickelson, again, still playing versus Tom Brady, obviously still playing like we talked about in our last segment. It's officially called, it's the match champions for charity. And it's part of the match was when Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson went up against each other a couple years ago. But this is for, champions for charity. Obviously, all four of them absolutely legendary athletes in their respective sports. And it's for coronavirus relief, as a lot of these sporting events, whether it be, like the NBA 2K tournament or this in particular, raising for coronavirus. There's not been an official location yet for where it's going to be, but they know for sure it would be without spectators, as I think is the absolute right move. They say as of now it's going to air on TNT, but again, some of these are still kind of up in the air. They need to get it approved just to make sure that, it's good in terms of health conditions and just making sure that everyone will be able to stay safe. But yeah, that's the breakdown, and I'm personally a big fan of it. I mean, Tiger Woods, most people argue he's the best golfer of all time, right there with Jack Nicklaus. But then Phil Mickelson, my opinion, is the best left-handed golfer to ever play the game. A long and great career, full of big highlights. And then on the football side, Peyton Manning arguably led both the Colts and the Broncos to a Super Bowl championship. And Tom Brady, I mean, we could go on and on forever about him, but they have all done such great things in their sport. And the fact that we could be watching them go like a 2v2 type of style in golf, I think is going to be great to watch. And I hope they keep promoting this. And once we get an official date, which I've been rumored and told that it was going to be sometime in May, I think May 12th, but I know sometime in mid-May. But I know I'd be excited to watch, and I'm kind of curious as to what you think of this for raising awareness for coronavirus.
Yeah, no, I like the move. It'll be nice to watch another sport again. Um, to see Peyton Manning competing on TV again would also be fun, even if it's golf instead of football. I mean, yeah, it would be a lot of fun to watch, and I I will definitely tune in. I don't watch a lot of golf, but I will watch this tournament. I think, yeah, I think going with golf will be. I'm going to make a prediction who I think is going to win. I know, making predictions out here, but I think it's going to be Peyton and Tiger, and here's why. I think Tiger is a better golfer than Phil Mickelson still at this point in his life, and I think Peyton is probably a better golfer than Tom because Peyton isn't training for football season. So he has more time to golf, and the only thing he really does is Peyton's places and details sometimes. But I mean, he has way more time to work on his golf swing than Tom Brady does because he's not an athlete in a sport anymore. He can kind of pick and choose what he wants to do. So he's probably just so he can golf way more than Tom. At least that's my guess. So I'm going to guess that Peyton Manning is a better golfer than Tom Brady because he just has more time to golf.
And that is a very fair point because I mean, Peyton being retired for a couple of years now. I will say this: what Brady's advantage is that he's a little bit younger, not obviously by a whole lot, but
Like what, a year and a half? I don't
that
know.
makes a difference. That makes a whole difference. No, but I think what's also interesting is when Tiger and Phil went against each other, that Phil actually won that match when they went it. So
that is true.
But now again, that could be Tiger having. You got two competitive sides because for Tiger and Peyton, Tiger may be wanting in a fun way. Might we also add? This is obviously not anything
Right.
real competitive, just for fun, and I think that's what's gonna make it great to watch. So Tiger kind of jokingly want to get back at Phil for winning, and then also, Tom after Peyton defeated him 20-18 in the AFC Championship when they went against each other. So kind of a good little rivalry between the two. If I had to make my prediction, though, that's tough because Phil is when Phil doesn't really have to worry about like spectators and just the regular game of golf, he's a really good golfer. But you're right. I mean, I'd be curious as to how Peyton is going to perform. And so I think I'm going to give the edge to Tiger and Peyton, but it takes one swing and it takes a couple shots to make a whole difference when it comes to this type of match.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how good Peyton is at golf. Or Peyton and Tom. Like, I think we know where Tiger and Phil are at. And I think Tiger wants to beat Phil. I mean, these people are still professional athletes. They're the most competitive people on the planet. Like, or some of the most competitive people on the planet. Like, let's not get this mixed up. They definitely want to. Yeah, I mean, Tiger wants to win. Phil wants to. They all want to win. It's just the question of who's the best at golfing pair.
Yeah, that's a good question, Zach. I think one thing that is curious is if, like, maybe either of the teams have played with each other beforehand, if they've gone to any other golf courses and maybe played for fun or just kind of gotten a feel for each other's games. I think location is also going to matter a little bit in terms of maybe travel distance, if they have to drive or fly or how close. But I think by the end of it, you and me can both agree that whenever it is, it's going to be lots of fun. I think a lot of people watch it kind of like with what you've said, with just wanting to watch a sport. So I think it'll raise some good money. And I think this is a great way to slowly get everyone connected back with sports. We're going to take a look at episodes 1 and 2 of The Last Dance and then look ahead at episodes 3 and 4 coming up on Sunday night. That's coming up on Beyond the Stats with Zach and Tanner.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. Zachariah Begley, Tanner Camp with you. We're going to be talking about the long-anticipated and a very much accepted docuseries, The Last Dance. 1 and 2 were last Sunday, 3 and 4 coming out this coming Sunday, depending on when you're watching or listening to this. But yeah, Tanner, just give me some initial thoughts on on The Last Dance.
So obviously there was a lot of hype going into this. This documentary wasn't even supposed to be out yet until the summer, I believe June or July. Don't know the exact date, but June or July. And obviously my guess would be that they pushed this to April to give people on ESPN something to watch, because when you hear this is literally the 97-98 season. They have cameras everywhere they follow. So I know I was excited for it. And right off the gate for episode 1, goes right into, talking about Michael Jordan, and some of the highlights that they had for him just makes you look back both in high school, college, and in the NBA. And I think that's something that really stuck out for me, but also just the content that was behind it and the people they chose to interview. They had a lot of diversity, even as much as Bob Knight, who, when you think Michael Jordan, I don't really relate to Bob Knight with that, but when he claimed that, because of Michael's drive and just his game, that he is by far the best college player that he's ever seen. They made so many different connections that I never would have thought with this season. So I really enjoyed it. And then obviously episode 2 followed, talking a little bit more about Scottie Pippen and the impact that he made for the Bulls. And then kind of the buildup getting ready for episodes 3 and 4. I finished episode 2, and then it said, are you kidding me? I need 3 and 4 to come out right now. So a lot of great concepts with it. I think my favorite, though, was the diversity in interviews. I think that was my favorite part.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to get a glimpse of what the Bulls were like in the 90s as a Bulls fan, who's been a Bulls fan my entire life. But I was born the year after. I was born in 99, the year after Michael Jordan retired. I know I'm dating myself a little bit, even though most people say that for being like older. I'm going to use it for being younger. And when Michael Jordan came back to play for the Wizards, I was like 2 and not old enough to really understand I wasn't watching basketball at the time. I didn't start watching basketball till I was like 6 or something. But yeah. I mean, what does that mean? Yeah, I mean, it's just been I think the biggest thing to me is the amount of dysfunction the Bulls are running with in the 90s. That was I think the most interesting to me and the most surprising is how well they're playing on the court, despite the fact that all these things are going around, like Tim Floyd being around the team in 96, even though the Bulls were winning championships. I mean, Jerry Krause basically saying it doesn't matter how good you do, Phil, you're done at the end of the year. And like openly trying to trade players, and the amount of dysfunction that was going around. And they won 3 championships with more dysfunction than arguably the Cleveland Browns. Like the amount of dysfunction it took that they had and were able to win. I mean, that's just a testament to how good they were, really. And maybe how good they were at compartmentalizing.
And, you talk about Phil Jackson, Jerry Krause, just straight up saying to him, this will be your last season, no matter how you do. I think a fun fact that I loved with it is that the reason why the documentary is called The Last Dance is because that's what he got the players kind of for, coaches and players meeting, gave and told them that we're going to be calling this The Last Dance, because they know after this, it doesn't matter how well they do. They could have a perfect record in the NBA and a perfect playoff season. But either way, they knew Phil was done, because Krause wanted to essentially rebuild the Bulls to prove that he could organize and get a team together. And I won't talk about what happened, after that, because a lot of questions behind that. But I think that's just that diversity in interviews and all of the things they brought in. They got some of the main stuff, the highlights with Michael Jordan, Scott Pippen stuff as well. But there were just, again, so many concepts to it that I cannot wait for episodes 3 and 4. And I know we kind of want to start thinking about that. We've gotten a little preview what episodes 3 and 4 are going to be like. But yeah, let's go ahead and you start things off about what's coming up for episodes 3 and 4.
Yeah, so we know for sure that episode 3 is about Dennis Rodman. I haven't heard anything of exactly what's going on for episode 4. I'm ready for episode 3 because I mean, it's Dennis Rodman, one of the best characters to play in the NBA, and I'm like I've heard some crazy stories about Dennis Rodman through the years, and I'm excited to see what Dennis Rodman was like on the Bulls. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of things about Dennis Rodman, and I am hoping that episode 3 about Dennis Rodman is like I think it could be the best episode of the entire series because I think Dennis Rodman is that interesting of a person. Um, and I'm not sure what episode 3 is going to be like because Dennis Rodman is so like eccentric that I am not sure where episode 3 is going to go. And that's probably why I'm the most excited about episode 3 of all the episodes.
And I think one thing about Dennis Rodman that we need to say is that he is arguably, I would even say, one of the best rebounders to ever play the game. I think, to be
I think
honest,
he's the best.
and that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think people put Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain, but let's also say those two were only going up against each other during that time. And Dennis Rodman, of the three that we just mentioned between Russell, Chamberlain, and Rodman, he was the shortest too, and he had to work to go after his rebound. So, as you said, a lot of people argue he may even be the best rebounder. But I think what I'm excited for, there was also a few glimpses of the bad boys, which obviously would be the Detroit Pistons with Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer. That's where I'm curious because we kind of have an idea for episode 3, but episode 4, I'll be interested as to where that goes. Will it focus on the bad boy? Will it focus on something else? That's what I'm most excited. Will it focus on Phil Jackson? We kind of talked about this going into it. So all we know is this: 3 and 4 are highly anticipated, not just because they're after 1 and 2, but because of the subjects they could be about. Again, we know for sure Dennis Rodman will be one of them, but really anticipating it, and I cannot wait. You will definitely find me right in front of the screen from the episode 3 to episode 4.
Right. And I hope episode 4 is about the bad boys. Oh, the Jordan rules. I'm ready. I am ready if episode 4 is about the bad boys because Jordan hasn't really talked about his career in this way before, and I'm excited if the bad boys like I want to hear Jordan's thoughts on the bad boys, and I hope they get Isaiah Thomas. I hope they got Isaiah Thomas to talk about it. I mean, I've heard some like they've talked about the bad boys recently. I heard this like the one particular story that I heard was Isaiah Thomas told Michael Jordan, "You may have the Chicago on your jersey, but I'm going to show you how Chicago boys play." And I am excited because that rivalry was cold blooded. So we'll see what happens with episodes 3 and 4. They're same time as last week. Episode 3 at 9 p.m. Eastern, episode 4 at 10 p.m. Eastern, and then of course episodes 1 and 2 replaying starting at 7 p.m. Eastern for episode 1, 8 p.m. Eastern for episode 2. Yeah, that's really all we have. Check us out on social media, Beyond the Stats. We're at where you can find wherever you listen to a podcast. We're there, Beyond the Stats. Rate our podcast, leave a comment if you can. We're also on YouTube, Beyond the Stats. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell to hear when we put out new videos. We put out new videos every Saturday.
Tanner Camp with Zachariah Begley. We appreciate the time. You've been tuning in to Beyond the Stats.